Hey everybody, it's your boy, and if you wanted any more proof that the current Conservative government is actually one of the most left-wing governments we've ever had, look no further than the most recent comments that Boris Johnson made in the press in regards to Vladimir Putin. Toxic masculinity, apparently, is the reason why Putin started this macho war, and if he were a woman, he never would have started it. He said that the Russian president was a perfect example of toxic masculinity. If Putin was a woman, which he obviously isn't, but if he were, I really don't think he would have embarked on a crazy macho war of invasion and violence in the way that he has. If you want a perfect example of toxic masculinity, it's what he's doing in Ukraine. Johnson also said that you need more women in positions of power. This view was also reiterated by the silly Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who says that Putin's view of the world is of a small man, a macho view of the world. You rarely hear the phrase small woman syndrome, you always hear small man syndrome, and I think he certainly got it in spades. Surprisingly, Nicola Sturgeon was the one who was the most balanced, although still in favour of his comments overall. And she says, I think it is important that we don't generalise. Women make mistakes as well as men make mistakes, but I do think women tend to bring more common sense and emotional intelligence and reasoned approach.
You serious?
Now that is fact-check lies. It is well known that women are the ones who are the most emotional of the species, and that is an absolute fact. That is complete bollocks from her. It's actually men who think of things, in general, far more logically, far more in a more tunnel vision way than women do. There's a reason why men are the majority in fields where logic and reason are valued higher than emotions. But how is Boris Johnson a conservative? How is he in any sense not a leftist? Like, what conservative would ever agree with the term toxic masculinity? Like, at least in theory, they shouldn't, because it's antithetical to what they believe in regards to the sexes. He's basically saying that if the whole world was run by women, there wouldn't be any wars, and everything would be peaceful and la-di-da. Well, of course, that's not true. Let's just stick to British history. We've had many firebrand queens. Matilda, for example, fought a civil war to get her son the throne from Stephen, and in the end compromised. Elizabeth I, for example, was the one who really kick-started our empire. She was the one who signed off on the colonial expeditions and the privateering that the likes of Francis Drake got involved in. And let us not forget Queen Victoria and some of the other queens like Mary, for example, in the 1700s, who basically wrote off on all of our other expeditions and wars that we fought all the way up to the early 20th century. The British Empire expanded the most during Victoria's reign. If she was this stereotypical angelic, peaceful woman that Boris Johnson claims women are, at least women in power are, we would never have expanded. The state would never have taken over India from the British East India Company. They would not have expanded into Africa. They wouldn't have done any of these things if she was what he claims women are like. Would Maggie Thatcher have defended the Falkland Islands when Argentina attacked? Obviously the answer is yes, she would, because she wasn't that type of woman. That type of woman doesn't exist in politics. There are no true pacifists like that either. Nobody is a true pacifist. Nobody would just stand there and take violence and allow themselves to be killed or allow their fellow countrymen to be killed if they got invaded. It just doesn't exist. None of this, in my opinion, should make his situation any more secure than it already is. In fact, this should really be just another brick in the wall in regards to his eventual collapse, because he's showing himself to not really be the conservative, the right-wing candidate that the country actually needs and what he likes to sell himself as. This is the guy who believes in green policies, although he is trying to limit them because of the war, but if there was no war, he was really trying to push Britain into a net zero carbon policy, which is ridiculous to say the least. Not only that, he's again pushing social justice policies until they don't work. He wasn't really strong on Brexit either. Even though he eventually got Brexit over the hurdle, he still compromised far too much and has left us in a predicament which he is now trying to fix, and potentially might break treaties to do so, which I don't really care. Whatever. He put himself in the position where Northern Ireland is almost a separate entity from the rest of the country. That's his fault. He, in the end, signed off on the backstop. It should have been a no deal from that point, because that has split up the country. But the writing is on the wall. He's already had a failed no confidence vote, which only failed because I think it's been badly timed, mainly due to the Jubilee and other factors. And he's just lost a recent by-election, where a really strong blue area went to the Liberal Democrats. That suggests to me, and should suggest to him, that policy changes are needed. He needs to go back to a more right-wing position. He needs to go to a more conservative position. But he won't do that because that's not what he is. Just look at the makeup of his cabinet. Who among them are true conservatives that the Tories like to go on about? None of them. I don't think that Labour will beat him in the next election, which is coming up in a few years' time, but I don't think he's going to win a majority either. If he continues on the path that he's on, eventually there's going to be a hung parliament if he continues doing this. I can't see any other outcome than a hung parliament, and he will have to go into some kind of coalition government once again, probably with the Lib Dems, maybe with the Ulster Unionists again. It'll just be another Theresa May situation all over again, and he has no one to blame for himself. He has this massive 80-seat majority that he's done very little with, and the stuff that he has done has not been good enough. He's lucky that Labour is in their most unelectable period for a long time. Despite even having Keir Starmer at the helm, they're still nowhere near at the point where I can say they could get elected. It's just not possible. But likewise, who in the Conservative Party is good enough to take over from Boris Johnson? I can't think of anybody. Maybe some of the backbenchers, but they're backbenchers for a reason. They tend to be low ambition, not very good leaders, and if they truly were people of conviction, they would try and actually, I don't know, take control of the party, but none of them do, because they're backbenchers for a reason. Maybe somewhere in the depths of the grassroots movement, there might be somebody somewhere, but that person won't turn up for another couple of decades anyway. And the less said about the small parties, the better. Boris Johnson is also incredibly lucky that there isn't any third-party competition, like from UKIP or a Brexit Party or Reform Party, that will allow him to steal their policies and pretend to be more right-wing than he actually is. He has no competition. He can do whatever he wants with this majority, and he can be as left-wing and non-conservative as he wants. Unfortunately, that's to the detriment of everybody else. But the thing is, the writing is on the wall. If he continues to do the things that he's doing right now and say the things that he's saying, he's going to come across as just completely inane, as unconservative, as weak. And if Labour lost a lot of their voters by saying stuff like toxic masculinity and being against white people, all that social justice nonsense, then how can he expect to keep all these new former Labour voters from the Red Wall on side? It's not going to happen, is it? But anyway, who knows? I might be wrong, but that's my prediction. If he continues doing this, he'll have a hung parliament and he may actually, in fact, lose his position. But until next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.